Standing in the sterile hallway of Children's Hospital at 3 in the morning, I watched my 7-year-old son, Marcus, fight for his life through the ICU window. The accident had happened so fast. One moment we were driving home from his baseball practice, the next I was watching paramedics pull his unconscious body from our mangled car. While Marcus lay connected to machines that beeped with every fragile heartbeat, I checked my phone for updates from the insurance company about covering his experimental treatment. That's when I discovered my business account had been completely emptied, $500,000 gone. My hands trembled as I traced the digital theft back to my sister Emma's husband, Brad, who I had trusted with emergency account access. My own family had stolen my son's lifeline while he lay dying. The fluorescent lights in the hospital parking lot cast harsh shadows as I dialed the bank's emergency line with shaking fingers. The automated system kept me on hold for 23 minutes while my mind raced through possibilities, each one more devastating than the last. When Nancy Williams from Fraud Prevention finally answered, her professional tone shifted to genuine concern as she pulled up my account details. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm looking at your business account now, and I have to tell you this withdrawal was executed using what appears to be legitimate power of attorney documents." Nancy explained, her keyboard clicking in the background. "The paperwork shows signatures dated 3 weeks ago, well before your son's accident." My stomach dropped. Brad hadn't acted impulsively during our family crisis. He had been methodically planning this theft while I worked 18-hour days building my financial consulting business, never suspecting that my own brother-in-law was studying my every move. Nancy continued reviewing the account activity, her voice growing more troubled. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm seeing a pattern of small test withdrawals over the past 6 weeks. Amounts like $200, $500, always on different days. It looks like someone was checking to see if you monitored your account regularly." The betrayal cut deeper with every detail. Brad had been probing my financial habits like a predator stalking prey. I thought back to family dinners where he asked casual questions about my business growth, my investment strategies, my account structures. Questions I answered openly because he was family, because I trusted him completely. "The withdrawal authorization includes a witness signature," Nancy added. Emma Johnson verified the documents as legitimate. Emma. My own sister had watched Brad forge my signature and authenticated the theft. She had looked into my eyes at Marcus's bedside just hours earlier, holding my hand while I cried, knowing she had helped steal the money that could save his life. "I need those documents flagged as fraudulent immediately," I managed to say through the tightness in my throat. "I'll start the fraud investigation process right away. But Mrs. Johnson, I have to warn you that with documents, this sophisticated recovery could take months or even years. The money was transferred to multiple LLC accounts before being moved offshore. Whoever orchestrated this knew exactly what they were doing." I ended the call and immediately dialed Emma's number. It rang 4 times before she answered with false sleepiness, as if I had woken her from peaceful dreams instead of calling about the devastation she had helped create. "Destiny. What's wrong? Is Marcus okay?" The audacity of her concern made my hands clench into fists. "You know exactly what's wrong, Emma. Where's my money?" A long silence stretched between us before Emma's voice returned colder than I had ever heard it. "I don't know what you're talking about." $500,000, Emma, gone from my business account using forged power of attorney documents that you witnessed, documents that Brad somehow had prepared weeks before Marcus's accident. "Brad needed that money more than you do," Emma said, her mask finally dropping completely. "You've always had everything handed to you, Destiny. Perfect grades, perfect business, perfect son. You never once asked how the rest of us were struggling while you built your little empire." That money was for Marcus's medical care. He's fighting for his life. Brad lost his job 6 months ago. We're 3 payments behind on our mortgage. My kids need school supplies and winter clothes while you drive around in your luxury car acting like you're better than everyone else. The cruelty in her voice shattered something inside me. This wasn't desperation talking. This was years of resentment finally breaking free. Emma had been harboring hatred while I thought we were close sisters. You can always make more money. Emma continued with devastating callousness. You're smart, you're successful, you'll figure it out. But Brad and I needed that cash right now to save our home. Emma Marcus might die without that treatment. Don't be so dramatic. Kids are resilient. Marcus will be fine with regular treatment. I hung up on my sister's voice, standing alone in the parking lot while my son's life hung in the balance 3 floors above me. The family I thought would support me through this nightmare had instead chosen to destroy us for their own selfish gains. Dawn was breaking over suburban Phoenix as I drove through familiar neighborhoods toward my mother's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned white. I needed Patricia to hear about Emma and Brad's betrayal from me before they could spin their lies. I needed my mother's support and outrage to help me figure out how to save Marcus. The jacaranda trees were blooming in Mom's front yard, their purple flowers carpeting the walkway where Marcus and I had played hopscotch just 2 weeks earlier during a family barbecue. That peaceful afternoon felt like a lifetime ago as I rang the doorbell rehearsing how to explain the unthinkable theft that had devastated our family. Patricia opened the door wearing her usual morning robe and slippers, her gray hair perfectly styled even at 6:30 in the morning. But instead of the shocked concern I expected, her face showed resignation, as if she had been waiting for this conversation. "I know why you're here," she said quietly, stepping aside to let me enter the living room, where family photos lined every surface. Pictures of happier times when I believed we all loved and protected each other. "Mom, they stole Marcus's treatment money. Brad forged documents and Emma helped him. I need your help figuring out what to do." Patricia settled into her favorite armchair, the one she always claimed gave her the best view of her garden. She folded her hands carefully in her lap and looked at me with something that resembled disappointment rather than surprise. "I know about the money, Destiny. I gave Brad my blessing." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the couch where Marcus always curled up during visits, surrounded by the throw pillows Emma had helped Mom pick out last Christmas. "You what?" Brad came to me 6 weeks ago, desperate and broken. He'd been unemployed for months, too proud to ask for help, while watching Emma struggle to feed their children. He showed me the foreclosure notice, the overdue bills, the shame of failing his family. "So you helped him steal from me?" Patricia's expression hardened. "Nobody stole anything. That money has been sitting in your account for months while your own sister's family faced homelessness. You've been so focused on building your business and spoiling Marcus that you forgot about the rest of us." I stared at my mother in disbelief. The woman who had raised me to value honesty and family loyalty was defending theft with twisted logic that blamed me for my own victimization. "Brad explained how you've been flaunting your success," Patricia continued. "New car, expensive clothes for Marcus' private school tuition. Meanwhile, Emma's been shopping at thrift stores and stretching hamburger meat with breadcrumbs to feed her kids. I worked for that money. I built my business from nothing. And your family supported you every step of the way. When you needed childcare during your divorce, who helped? When you needed references for business loans, who vouched for you? When Marcus needed emotional support, who was there?" The manipulation was breathtaking. Patricia was rewriting our family history to justify theft, making my success seem like a debt I owed rather than something I had earned through sacrifice and determination. Mom Marcus needs experimental treatment that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Without that money, he might not survive. Patricia's face softened slightly, but her resolve remained firm. Marcus is a fighter just like his mother. He'll pull through with regular medical care, but Brad's children need immediate help to keep their home and their stability. You're choosing Emma's mortgage payments over your grandson's life. I'm choosing to help the family members who actually need help instead of enabling your selfishness, Patricia snapped. Ever since your divorce, you've become completely self-centered. Everything revolves around you and Marcus, while the rest of us struggle in silence. The accusation was like a knife twisting in my chest. I had worked endless hours to provide for Marcus as a single mother building financial security, so he would never face the poverty I remembered from my own childhood. Now my own mother was using my dedication against me. "If you pursue legal action against Brad, you'll tear this family apart," Patricia warned. "Emma's children will become homeless and you'll be responsible for destroying their lives over money that you can always replace." "I can't replace Marcus if he dies." "Don't be so dramatic. Children recover from injuries all the time, but family relationships once broken never fully heal." Patricia stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. "Make the right choice, Destiny. Put your family first for once in your life." "What about me? What about Marcus? Aren't we family too?" "You stopped being family when you decided you were too good for the rest of us," Patricia said coldly. "Now you need to decide what matters more, your pride or your sister's children." I left my mother's house understanding that the theft was deeper than money. My own family had been nurturing resentment for years, viewing my success as a personal attack on their struggles. They had convinced themselves that stealing from me was actually justice, that my hard work entitled them to compensation for their own choices. Returning to the hospital felt like entering a war zone where every minute counted and every decision carried life or death consequences. The pediatric ICU buzzed with controlled urgency as nurses monitored critically ill children whose families clustered nearby in various states of hope and despair. I had joined their ranks, another parent fighting for their child's survival while the world continued spinning indifferently outside the hospital walls. Dr. Sarah Rodriguez met me at Marcus's bedside, her expression grave, as she reviewed his latest test results on her tablet. Marcus looked so small connected to the ventilator and monitoring equipment, his usually bright brown eyes closed as machines breathed for him and tracked every vital sign. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to discuss Marcus's condition with you," Dr. Rodriguez said, gesturing toward the consultation room where difficult conversations happened away from other patients. "His intracranial pressure has increased significantly overnight, and we're seeing signs of secondary brain injury that weren't apparent immediately after the accident." My legs felt weak as we sat down in the sterile room with its tissue boxes and religious pamphlets, all the tools hospitals provide for families facing the unthinkable. "Marcus needs immediate transfer to Boston Children's Hospital for a specialized neurological procedure," Dr. Rodriguez explained with the careful precision doctors use when delivering devastating news. Dr. Amanda Chen leads a team there that performs experimental surgery for cases like Marcus's. The procedure has shown remarkable success rates, but it requires specific equipment and expertise that we don't have here. "How much time do we have?" 72 hours maximum. After that, the window for optimal intervention closes, and Marcus's chances of full recovery decrease dramatically. The timeline felt like a countdown to catastrophe. 72 hours to somehow replace the money Brad had stolen, arrange the transfer, and save my son's life. The procedure costs approximately $200,000 up front, Dr. Rodriguez continued. Boston Children's requires payment guarantees before accepting transfer patients for experimental treatments. $200,000 I no longer had thanks to my family's betrayal. I thought about the bank manager's warning that fund recovery could take months or years, time Marcus didn't have. "My insurance company is reviewing coverage for experimental procedures," I managed to say. "I spoke with your insurance representative this morning," Dr. Rodriguez said gently. "There's been some confusion about your policy details. They mentioned recent changes to beneficiary information that are complicating the claims process." My stomach dropped. Brad hadn't just stolen my savings, he had sabotaged my insurance coverage as well. His theft was systematic, designed to eliminate every financial resource I might use to save Marcus. "Mrs. Johnson, I need you to understand the reality we're facing," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Without this intervention, Marcus's brain injury will likely result in permanent cognitive disabilities, if he survives at all. The bleeding and swelling are progressing faster than we can control with conventional treatments." I left the consultation feeling like I was drowning in an ocean of helplessness. The hallway buzzed with normal hospital activity. Doctors making rounds, families visiting patients, children laughing in the play therapy room. Life continuing normally while my world collapsed in slow motion. At the nurse's station, I overheard two pediatric specialists discussing a case that sounded horrifyingly familiar. 7-year-old male severe traumatic brain injury needs Boston transfer, but family can't secure funding, one doctor said to another. Those cases break your heart, the second doctor replied. Kids that age can make incredible recoveries with the right intervention, but without it. They moved on without finishing the sentence, but their implication was clear. Children like Marcus rarely survived without immediate specialized treatment. The experimental procedure wasn't just about improving his quality of life. It was about keeping him alive. I called my insurance company from Marcus's bedside, navigating automated systems, while watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. When I finally reached a human representative, the news was worse than I had feared. Mrs. Johnson, we show recent changes to your policy that were submitted 4 weeks ago, the representative explained. The modifications affect coverage limits and beneficiary designations. Until we can verify the legitimacy of these changes, your claims are on hold. Brad had been planning his attack for over a month, systematically destroying every financial safety net I had built to protect Marcus. The theft wasn't just opportunistic greed, it was calculated sabotage designed to ensure I couldn't recover or find alternative funding sources. As afternoon faded into evening, Marcus's condition continued deteriorating. His vital signs showed the progression Dr. Rodriguez had warned about, the secondary brain injury spreading like poison through his developing mind. Time was slipping away while my family celebrated their successful theft, believing they had solved their financial problems at my son's expense. The law office of Jessica Walsh occupied the 15th floor of a downtown Phoenix high-rise, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the desert valley where I had built my life and business. Jessica came highly recommended as a specialist in financial crimes and family law, the kind of attorney who fought impossible cases and won. If anyone could help me recover the stolen money in time to save Marcus, it would be her. Jessica reviewed the bank documents, forged power of attorney paperwork, and insurance policy changes that Brad had orchestrated with methodical precision. Her expression grew increasingly troubled as she examined each piece of evidence, occasionally making notes on her yellow legal pad with the intensity of someone solving a complex puzzle. Mrs. Johnson. I have to be honest with you, Jessica said after 30 minutes of silent review. This theft was executed by someone with sophisticated knowledge of financial systems and legal documentation. These forgeries are nearly perfect, and the money trail shows professional-level money laundering techniques. My heart sank as I realized the implications. Brad hadn't just stolen from me. He had professional help, possibly from criminal networks that specialized in this type of theft. The offshore transfers were conducted through a series of limited liability companies registered in Delaware, Nevada, and the Cayman Islands. Jessica explained, spreading out documents across her conference table. Each LLC was created specifically for this transaction and dissolved immediately afterward. Whoever helped your brother-in-law knew exactly how to make this money disappear. She pulled up security footage on her laptop, showing me bank surveillance that made my blood run cold. Brad appeared on screen, accompanied by a well-dressed man in his 50s, wearing expensive suits and carrying a leather briefcase that suggested serious money and connections. This man appears in footage from 3 different banks over the past month, Jessica said, pointing to Brad's unknown associate. He's clearly experienced in financial crimes, and his presence suggests your family theft is part of a larger criminal operation. The revelation was staggering. My trusted brother-in-law wasn't just a desperate husband who made a terrible decision. He was working with professional criminals who had likely targeted our family specifically for their wealth and vulnerability. Even if we file criminal charges immediately and freeze all accessible accounts, asset recovery in cases like this typically takes 18 to 36 months. Jessica warned. "The money has been moved through multiple jurisdictions, and international asset recovery involves complex legal processes that don't move quickly." 36 months. Marcus had 72 hours. The legal fees for pursuing this case could easily reach $50,000, and that's assuming we can trace the funds successfully. Jessica continued with the brutal honesty I needed to hear. International asset recovery requires cooperation from multiple government agencies and foreign courts. There are no guarantees. I sat in Jessica's office surrounded by law books and legal precedents, feeling like a drowning woman being offered a life preserver made of concrete. The legal system that should protect families like mine moved too slowly to save my son, while criminals like Brad's associates use that sluggish pace to their advantage. "There's something else troubling me about this case," Jessica said, pulling out additional documents. "The sophistication level suggests this theft was planned for much longer than 6 weeks. Someone has been studying your financial patterns, business operations, and family relationships for possibly a year or more." The implications were terrifying. While I had been working to build financial security for Marcus and myself, criminals had been watching, learning, and planning our destruction. Every family gathering, every casual conversation about my business, every expression of trust in Brad had been feeding information to people who wanted to destroy us. "I'm also concerned about your safety," Jessica added. "Criminal networks that operate at this level don't like loose ends or witnesses. Your family members may be in more danger than they realize." As I left Jessica's office, I understood that I was fighting a war where my opponents had superior weapons experience and resources. The legal system offered justice that would come too late to save Marcus, while my family celebrated their Pyrrhic victory, unaware that they had allied themselves with dangerous criminals who viewed them as expendable tools. The elevator descended toward the parking garage while my phone buzzed with updates from the hospital. Marcus's condition was worsening and time was running out. I needed a miracle, or my son would become another casualty in a war I didn't even know existed until it was almost over. My best friend, Rachel Martinez, had been my anchor through the divorce, the business startup struggles, and every challenge of single motherhood. When I called her from the hospital parking lot, barely able to speak through my exhaustion and despair, she immediately took charge with the fierce loyalty that had defined our friendship since college. "I'm starting a fundraising campaign right now," Rachel declared, her voice crackling with determination through the phone. "Social media, GoFundMe, local news coverage, everything. We're going to raise that money, Destiny." Within 6 hours, Rachel had created a compelling fundraising page with Marcus's photos and medical details, sharing our story across every platform she could access. Her network of friends, co-workers, and community members began spreading the campaign with remarkable speed. The response was immediate and overwhelming, but not in the way either of us expected. The first surprise came from Jake Morrison, who owned the auto repair shop where I had my car serviced. His comment on the fundraising page stopped me cold. I've been waiting years for someone to expose what Brad Johnson has been doing to families in this town. That man approached me last year with some investment opportunity that sounded like a complete scam. I'm glad someone finally caught him. Then came Carol Stevens from the PTA. Brad tried to convince several parents to invest in his consulting business last spring. When we researched the company address, it led to an empty strip mall. We reported it to the Better Business Bureau, but nothing came of it. Message after message revealed a disturbing pattern. Brad had been operating financial scams throughout our community for at least 2 years, targeting vulnerable families and elderly residents with sophisticated fraud schemes. He wasn't just a desperate brother-in-law who made a terrible decision. He was a predator who had been hunting victims while hiding behind his marriage to my sister. Local business owner Maria Gonzalez shared the most devastating revelation. Brad convinced my elderly father to invest his retirement savings in a fake real estate development. When my dad started asking questions, Brad told him that his own sister-in-law, Destiny Johnson, had verified the investment as legitimate. My father lost $38,000 believing you had endorsed Brad's lies. The fundraising campaign raised $42,000 in 2 days, but it also exposed that Brad had been using my reputation and my business credentials to legitimize his criminal activities. He had been telling victims that I endorsed his schemes, using my professional success as bait to lure people into his traps. Even more painful were the comments from neighbors who revealed how Emma had been spreading malicious rumors about me for over a year. She had told people at school events that I was an abusive mother who planned to abandon Marcus after gaining custody in the divorce. She claimed I was wealthy and selfish, refusing to help family members in need while flaunting my success around town. Emma told me at the grocery store that you were planning to move to California and leave Marcus with your mother, wrote Jennifer Park, whose daughter played soccer with Marcus. She said you were tired of being a single mom and wanted to start over without the burden of a child. I'm horrified to learn she was lying. The character assassination campaign explained so much about recent interactions that had puzzled me. Other parents at Marcus's school had become distant, and cold play dates had mysteriously been canceled, and business referrals had slowed despite my company's excellent reputation. Emma had been systematically destroying my social and professional relationships while Brad studied my financial vulnerabilities. Rachel discovered the most disturbing information while researching local news coverage. 3 other families in neighboring towns had been victims of similar thefts over the past 18 months. In each case, the victims were successful single mothers or recent widows with children facing medical crises. The pattern was too specific to be coincidental. This wasn't random destiny, Rachel explained as we sat in the hospital cafeteria surrounded by lukewarm coffee and untouched sandwiches. Whoever's behind this targets specific types of families during specific types of crises. They're predators who feed on desperation and family dysfunction. The realization that Marcus and I had been selected as victims by professional criminals was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Our family's betrayal wasn't personal failure or evidence of deep character flaws in my relatives. We had been hunted by people who specialized in exploiting family weaknesses during medical emergencies. But the most shocking discovery came from Tom Bradley, a former co-worker of Brad's who had been following the fundraising campaign. His message arrived as I sat beside Marcus's hospital bed, watching machines keep my son alive, while the clock ticked toward our deadline. Destiny. I worked with Brad at Pinnacle Financial for 3 years before he was fired for embezzlement last year, Tom wrote. He stole over $60,000 from client accounts before they caught him. The company didn't press charges to avoid bad publicity, but Brad was blacklisted from the entire financial industry. He's been unemployed for over a year, not 6 months like Emma claims. Everything fell into place with sickening clarity. Brad had lost his job for theft, not economic circumstances. He had been unemployed and likely planning criminal activities for months before targeting my family. Emma knew about his criminal history and had helped him select me as their next victim. The fundraising campaign continued growing, ultimately raising $68,000 from a community that wanted to help Marcus while expressing outrage at Brad's predatory behavior. But the money wasn't nearly enough for the Boston procedure, and more importantly, the campaign had revealed that our family crisis was part of a much larger criminal conspiracy that threatened other innocent families. The ICU maintained an atmosphere of hushed intensity where every sound carried significance. The steady rhythm of ventilators, the occasional alarm from monitoring equipment, and the soft conversations between medical staff who dealt with life and death decisions every day. I had spent so many hours in the chair beside Marcus's bed that the nurses knew my coffee preferences and the security guards recognized me during shift changes. It was during the quiet hours just before dawn on Marcus's 4th day in intensive care when something extraordinary happened. I was dozing fitfully in the uncomfortable recliner when a small, weak voice called my name. Mommy. I jerked awake to find Marcus looking at me with confused but conscious eyes, the first time he had been truly aware since the accident. His voice was hoarse from the ventilator tube that had been removed just hours earlier, but his mind was clearly working as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. "Marcus, oh honey, you're awake." I pressed the nurse call button while gently taking his hand, afraid to move too quickly or overwhelm him after so many days of unconsciousness. "Where are we?" Marcus asked, his eyes scanning the machines and monitors with the natural curiosity that had always characterized his approach to new situations. "You're in the hospital, baby. You were in a car accident, but you're going to be okay." Nurse Janet Williams arrived within seconds, her experienced eyes immediately assessing Marcus's alertness and responsiveness. She began the routine neurological checks that would determine how well his brain was functioning after the trauma. "Can you tell me your full name?" Janet asked gently. "Marcus David Johnson. I'm 7 years old. Is my mom okay?" The relief of hearing him speak coherently and remember basic information was overwhelming, but Janet's expression remained professionally cautious as she tested his motor functions and memory recall. "Marcus, I need to tell you something important," I said, holding his hand as his eyes focused on my face. "Do you remember anything from before the accident?" Marcus's forehead wrinkled as he concentrated his young mind, working to piece together recent memories. "We were driving home from baseball practice. You were singing along to that song you like. Then there was a loud noise and everything went black. Do you remember anything else about family visits or conversations you might have heard?" Marcus's expression shifted, becoming more serious as older memories surfaced. "Mommy, I need to tell you something important. Before the accident, I heard Uncle Brad and Aunt Emma talking about bad things." Janet finished her assessment and stepped back, recognizing that Marcus needed to share something urgent with me. "His neurological responses are excellent," she whispered. "I'll give you privacy, but call if you need anything." "What did you hear, sweetheart?" I asked, settling closer to Marcus's bed. "Remember when we went to Grandma's house for dinner 2 weeks ago? While you were helping in the kitchen, Uncle Brad was on the phone in the living room. He didn't know I was under the table playing with my toy cars." Marcus's memory for details had always been exceptional, a trait that served him well in school and made him an excellent witness to adult conversations that weren't meant for children's ears. Uncle Brad was talking to someone about taking what they deserve and account numbers. He said names and numbers that sounded like the ones you use for your business stuff. My heart raced as I realized Marcus had inadvertently overheard Brad planning the theft weeks before the accident. My son had been carrying this information while Brad and Emma pretended to support our family. "Did you hear anything else?" "Uncle Brad said he had a friend who knows about moving money safely, and Aunt Emma was there too. She said they needed to make sure Destiny can't trace it back to them." The revelation was devastating and invaluable. Marcus had witnessed the criminal conspiracy that destroyed our financial security, providing details that could help investigators track the money and identify Brad's criminal associates. "Mommy, I was scared because they were talking about you like you were a bad person. Uncle Brad said you were selfish and needed to learn a lesson. I wanted to tell you, but I wasn't sure if I understood what they meant." "Oh, honey, you understood perfectly. You're not in trouble for listening to their conversation. You actually helped me understand what really happened." Marcus squeezed my hand with surprising strength for someone who had been unconscious for days. "I heard Uncle Brad say something else too. He said, after the accident, Destiny won't be able to think straight, and we can take everything while she's distracted." The words hit me like a physical blow. After the accident, Marcus, did Uncle Brad say anything about causing an accident? He said, once the car problem happens, everything will be perfect. I didn't understand what he meant then, but now. Marcus's innocent revelation suggested something far more sinister than theft. If Brad had sabotaged our car to cause the accident that put Marcus in the hospital, then he wasn't just a thief, he was attempted murderer who had used my son as a weapon against me. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" Marcus asked, his young voice carrying wisdom beyond his years. "Yes, baby, we're going to be just fine, and the bad people who hurt us are going to face justice for what they did." Marcus smiled for the first time since waking up, his resilient spirit shining through despite everything he had endured. "I trust you, Mommy. You always protect me." As Marcus drifted back to sleep, his hand still holding mine, I realized that my 7-year-old son had provided the key evidence needed to expose Brad's criminal network and prove that our accident wasn't random chance. It was a calculated attack designed to create the perfect conditions for financial theft. The fight for justice was far from over, but Marcus had given us the weapons we needed to win. The hospital corridors had become as familiar as my own home during Marcus's recovery, so when my phone rang with an unknown local number while I sat in the family waiting area, I almost didn't answer. The past week had brought too many difficult conversations with insurance representatives, bank investigators, and well-meaning relatives offering sympathy but no solutions. "Mrs. Johnson, this is Michael Thompson from Thompson Investigative Services," the caller said with a voice that carried both authority and genuine concern. "I understand your family has been victimized by financial crimes involving Brad Johnson." I immediately tensed, wondering if this was another reporter seeking information about our case, or worse, someone connected to Brad's criminal network trying to gauge how much I knew about their operation. "I'm calling because your situation is connected to a case I've been investigating for the past 18 months, Michael continued. "Brad Johnson is part of a sophisticated theft ring that targets families during medical crises. You're not their first victim, Mrs. Johnson. You're not even their 10th. "Who are you exactly?" "I'm a private investigator specializing in financial crimes. I was hired by the Hendricks family in Tempe after their daughter was injured in a swimming pool accident and someone drained their savings account during the emergency. The theft pattern matches what happened to your family exactly." Michael's credibility increased as he provided specific details about the Hendricks case that hadn't been reported in any news coverage. Their daughter had needed experimental surgery after nearly drowning, and while the family focused on her medical care, someone with access to their financial information had systematically emptied multiple accounts using forged documents. The Hendricks case led me to investigate similar thefts across Arizona, Nevada, and California, Michael explained. "I've identified at least 15 families who were targeted using identical methods. Single mothers, recent widows, divorced parents, dealing with children's medical emergencies. The victims are always financially successful but emotionally vulnerable." "How is Brad involved with other cases?" Brad Johnson appears in surveillance footage from banks in 3 different cities where these thefts occurred. He's working with a network that includes Marcus Reed, a former bank manager who was fired for embezzlement, and Dr. Angela Foster, a corrupt accountant who specializes in creating offshore LLCs for money laundering. The names meant nothing to me, but the systematic nature of the criminal network was becoming clear. Brad wasn't just an opportunistic thief who targeted his own family. He was part of a professional operation that had perfected the art of exploiting family medical crises. The network identifies potential victims through social media community records and insurance databases, Michael continued. They study families for months, learning about relationships, financial patterns, and vulnerabilities. When a medical emergency occurs, they strike immediately, while the family is too distracted and desperate to notice the theft until it's too late. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your case could be the key to bringing down the entire network. Brad made critical mistakes this time that he avoided in previous thefts. He got emotionally involved because you're family, and emotions make criminals sloppy." Michael arranged to meet me at a coffee shop 6 blocks from the hospital, choosing a public location where we could speak privately without risking surveillance from Brad's associates. He arrived carrying a leather briefcase filled with files that represented months of meticulous investigation. "The network has been operating for at least 3 years, Michael explained as he spread photographs and documents across our corner table. "They've stolen approximately $4.2 million from families across the Southwest, always targeting parents with children facing life-threatening medical situations." The photographs showed Brad meeting with different people in various locations: upscale restaurants, parking garages, hotel lobbies. In every image, he appeared confident and comfortable, clearly experienced in criminal activities that went far beyond his recent theft from my family. Here's what makes your case different, Michael said, pointing to bank security footage that showed Brad acting nervous and argumentative during the transaction. In previous thefts, Brad was calm and professional. This time, he's agitated, checking his phone, constantly looking over his shoulder. He's scared. Scared of what? Scared of you. Brad has never stolen from someone who knows him personally, someone who can identify his habits and associations. The network's success depends on anonymous victims who can't provide personal information about the criminals. Michael pulled out audio equipment and explained that he had been working with federal investigators to build a case against the network. We need your cooperation to set up a controlled operation that will expose the entire criminal organization. But I have to warn you, Mrs. Johnson, this could put you and your family in serious danger. What kind of danger? The network eliminates loose ends. In 2 previous cases, victims who got too close to exposing the operation suffered accidents, car crashes, house fires, unexplained medical emergencies. These people don't hesitate to use violence when their operation is threatened. The revelation that Brad's criminal associates were willing to commit murder to protect their theft operation was terrifying, but it also explained the sophisticated planning and execution of the crimes. We weren't dealing with opportunistic thieves. We were fighting organized criminals who had killed to protect their operation. The good news is that Federal Task Force has been tracking this network for over a year, Michael said. They have surveillance financial records and testimony from multiple victims. What they need now is someone on the inside who can help them gather final evidence for arrests. What would I have to do? We need Brad to attempt one more transaction that will reveal the location of all stolen funds and identify every member of the criminal network. Based on his pattern, he'll try to move the money again within 72 hours to avoid federal detection. 72 hours, the same deadline Marcus faced for his experimental treatment. If we coordinate this operation correctly, we can recover your stolen funds and arrest the entire network simultaneously, Michael said. But timing is critical and the risks are substantial. As I left the coffee shop with Michael's business card and a federal agent's contact information, I realized that saving Marcus's life and achieving justice for our family had become part of a much larger battle against criminals who specialized in destroying families during their most vulnerable moments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital parking lot as I walked toward the main entrance, mentally preparing for another day of coordinating Marcus's care while secretly planning the federal investigation that could bring down Brad's criminal network. I had spent most of the night reviewing Michael Thompson's evidence and speaking with FBI agents who confirmed the scope of the theft operation we were fighting. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rodriguez, "Need to see you immediately. Important development with Marcus's case." I quickened my pace, wondering if Marcus had experienced complications overnight or if there was news about the Boston transfer. But as the elevator carried me toward the pediatric ICU, my phone rang with a call that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Johnson, this is Amanda Foster from Child Protective Services," the caller said with professional authority. "We need to schedule an immediate meeting regarding your son, Marcus Johnson." "I'm sorry, what?" "We've received multiple reports expressing concern about your fitness as a parent and your son's safety. These reports allege that you may have been involved in causing Marcus's accident and are attempting to exploit his injuries for financial gain." The accusation was so outrageous and unexpected that I momentarily couldn't speak. Someone was claiming I had deliberately injured my own son for money, the most heinous accusation anyone could level against a parent. "Who filed these reports?" "I can't discuss specific sources, but the allegations include insurance fraud, reckless endangerment of a minor, and emotional instability that poses ongoing risk to your child's welfare." My hands shook as the elevator reached Marcus's floor, and I saw familiar figures waiting near the nurses' station. Emma stood beside Patricia, both wearing expressions of concerned relatives rather than the criminal conspirators they actually were. With them stood a woman in a business suit carrying an official briefcase, clearly the CPS worker who would determine my son's future. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Amanda Foster," the woman said, extending her hand with professional courtesy that barely masked the suspicion in her eyes. "I need to conduct an immediate assessment of Marcus's situation and your parenting capabilities." Based on what evidence? Amanda consulted her tablet, reading from official reports that made my stomach sink with every word. "Multiple family members have expressed concern that you've been displaying erratic behavior since your son's accident. They report that you've been making wild accusations about theft and conspiracy while refusing to accept help from relatives who are trying to support you." Emma stepped forward with perfectly performed concern. "Destiny, we're worried about you. You've been acting paranoid and aggressive, accusing Brad and me of terrible things, while Marcus needs stability and family support. You stole $500,000 from my business account. See what I mean?" Emma said to Amanda Foster, shaking her head sadly. "She's been fixated on this delusion about missing money. We think the stress of Marcus's accident has caused some kind of psychological break." Patricia nodded supportively. "Destiny has always been prone to dramatic thinking, but since the divorce, and now with Marcus's injuries, she's become completely irrational. She's accused her own family of crimes that never happened, while ignoring Marcus's actual needs." Amanda Foster made notes while Emma and Patricia painted a picture of me as an unstable parent who was exploiting my son's medical crisis for attention and financial gain. Their performance was masterful, presenting themselves as concerned relatives trying to protect Marcus from my allegedly dangerous mental state. "Mrs. Johnson, there are also questions about the circumstances of your son's accident," Amanda continued. "The preliminary police report notes inconsistencies in your account of what happened, and there are suggestions that your driving may have contributed to the crash. I realized with growing horror that Brad hadn't just stolen my money. He had orchestrated a comprehensive character assassination designed to strip me of parental rights while painting himself and Emma as Marcus's saviors. If CPS removed Marcus from my custody, Brad and Emma would gain control over his medical decisions and any insurance settlements from the accident. These allegations are completely false. My family is involved in criminal theft, and they're trying to cover their tracks by discrediting me." "That's exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we're concerned about," Emma said with practiced sympathy. "Destiny, you need professional help. Marcus needs family members who can think clearly and make rational decisions about his care." Amanda Foster's expression showed she was beginning to accept Emma and Patricia's version of events. The three women had crafted a narrative that explained away the evidence of theft as delusions while positioning themselves as Marcus's true protectors. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm ordering a temporary protective custody evaluation while we investigate these allegations thoroughly," Amanda announced. "Marcus will remain in medical care, but all major decisions regarding his treatment will require court approval until this matter is resolved." "You can't do this. Marcus needs the experimental treatment in Boston, and we only have 48 hours left. The court will review all medical recommendations through appropriate legal channels," Amanda said firmly. "If this treatment is truly necessary, proper procedures will ensure it happens safely." As Emma and Patricia exchanged satisfied glances, I understood that Brad's criminal network included people with access to official systems who could manipulate government agencies to serve their purposes. The theft had been just the beginning of a systematic destruction designed to leave me powerless, while Brad's associates gained control over every aspect of Marcus's life and mine. The war for my family had escalated beyond financial crimes into a battle for my son's life, and my freedom fought against enemies who had infiltrated the very systems meant to protect children and families from exactly this kind of predatory behavior. Michael Thompson's office occupied the second floor of a nondescript professional building where private investigators, bail bondsmen, and defense attorneys operated in the shadow economy of legal services. His walls displayed certificates from law enforcement academies and photographs with police officials establishing credibility that I desperately needed as my world collapsed under false accusations. Mrs. Johnson, I've uncovered evidence that changes everything about your case, Michael said, gesturing for me to sit, while he pulled up video files on his computer screen. Hospital security footage from the day of Marcus's accident shows something your family doesn't know we have. The timestamp showed 3:15 p.m., approximately 2 hours after Marcus's accident, when he was still in emergency surgery, and I was meeting with trauma surgeons about his condition. The security camera captured the hospital parking lot where Emma stood beside her silver Honda Civic, clearly agitated and speaking animatedly on her cell phone. "Watch her body language," Michael said, enhancing the audio with specialized software. "She's distressed, not celebrating. This isn't someone who just successfully completed a planned theft." The enhanced audio revealed Emma's voice breaking with emotion as she spoke to someone who was clearly Brad based on her responses to his side of the conversation. "I can't do this to her, Brad. Look what happened to Marcus. This is wrong." A pause while Brad responded, then Emma's voice becoming more desperate. "You said nobody would get hurt. You said it was just about the money, not about actually hurting people." Another pause followed by Emma attempting to end the conversation. "I'm going home. Find another way to get the money. I won't be part of this anymore." But Emma didn't leave the parking lot. Instead, she remained for another 27 minutes, taking 3 more phone calls that progressively broke down her resistance to continuing with Brad's plan. "You can hear the exact moment when Brad threatens her children," Michael explained, pointing to a specific timestamp. Emma's entire demeanor changes from resistance to terror. The enhanced audio captured Emma's frightened whisper, "You wouldn't hurt my babies. You're their father." Brad's response, partially audible through Emma's phone speaker, chilled me to the bone. "Accidents happen to children all the time, Emma. Look at Marcus." "He's threatening to hurt Emma's children if she doesn't cooperate," Michael said. "This footage proves Emma isn't a willing accomplice. She's another victim being coerced through threats of violence against her family." Michael pulled up additional evidence that painted a horrifying picture of systematic abuse and manipulation. Bank records showed that Brad had been stealing from Emma's personal accounts for over 8 months, gradually isolating her financially, while increasing her dependence on his approval. Emma tried to leave Brad 6 months ago. Michael explained, showing me police reports that Emma had filed and then withdrawn. She called domestic violence hotlines 4 times but never followed through with getting help. Brad's been using her children as hostages to ensure her compliance. Medical records from Emma's family doctor revealed a pattern of injuries consistent with domestic violence, bruises, sprains, and anxiety-related symptoms that Emma had attributed to accidents and stress. Brad had been physically abusing his wife while planning criminal activities that would further trap her in their toxic relationship. The most damaging evidence came from Emma's home computer. Michael said, pulling up screenshots of emails and browser history. She's been researching legal options for escaping abusive marriages and protecting children from violent fathers. She knows Brad is dangerous, but she's terrified of what he might do if she tries to leave. The browser history showed Emma researching topics like how to report domestic violence safely, legal protection for abuse victims, and most heartbreakingly, what happens to children when abusive father gets custody. She'd been trying to find ways to protect her family, while Brad used her love for her children as a weapon against her. Emma also discovered Brad's criminal activities months ago. Michael continued showing me screenshots of financial documents that Emma had photographed and stored in a hidden folder on her computer. She's been documenting his theft ring involvement, probably planning to use it as evidence if she ever found courage to leave him. The photos showed bank statements, meeting locations, phone numbers, and names of Brad's criminal associates. Emma had been conducting her own investigation into her husband's crimes while pretending to support his activities to protect her children from his threatened violence. "Here's the most significant discovery," Michael said, opening an audio file that made my hands clench into fists. "Emma has been secretly recording Brad's phone calls for the past 3 months. The audio quality was poor, clearly recorded from a hidden device, but Brad's voice was unmistakable as he discussed criminal activities with his associates. "The Johnson theft is perfect timing," Brad said in the recording. "Destiny's so focused on her kid that she won't notice the money missing for days. By then we'll have it offshore and untraceable." The recording continued with Brad discussing Marcus's accident in terms that suggested premeditation rather than opportunistic timing. "Car accidents are perfect cover for family theft," Brad explained to his associate. "Families are too traumatized to think clearly about money, and if anyone gets suspicious later, you can always claim the stress made them paranoid." Michael paused the recording, allowing the implications to sink in. "Brad has been planning to steal from your family for months, possibly since he first learned about your business success. The car accident gave him the perfect opportunity, but he may have also created that opportunity." "Are you saying Brad sabotaged my car?" The recording suggests he has experience using accidents to create opportunities for theft. Federal investigators are reviewing the wreckage from your crash to look for evidence of mechanical tampering. As Michael continued playing Emma's secret recordings, a complete picture emerged of a criminal network that had been operating for years, destroying families through a combination of theft violence and systematic psychological manipulation. Emma hadn't been my enemy. She had been another victim trapped by the same criminals who nearly killed my son. The evidence would save Marcus and expose the truth, but it also revealed that our family's nightmare was part of a much larger pattern of violence that had destroyed other innocent families across multiple states. The FBI field office in downtown Phoenix buzzed with controlled energy as Agent Sarah Williams spread surveillance photos and financial documents across the conference table. Michael Thompson sat beside me, his investigation files integrated with federal evidence that painted a comprehensive picture of the criminal network that had targeted our family. "Mrs. Johnson, your case has given us the breakthrough we've needed for 18 months. Agent Williams explained, her professional demeanor barely containing obvious excitement about finally moving against criminals who had evaded capture for years. "Brad Johnson's emotional involvement with your family has made him careless in ways that will bring down the entire operation." The evidence was staggering in its scope. The criminal network had operated across 7 states, stealing over $8 million from families during medical emergencies. Their victims included parents dealing with childhood cancer accident injuries, premature births requiring expensive NICU care, and other situations where desperate families made easy targets for sophisticated financial predators. The network operates like a business. Agent Williams continued pointing to organizational charts that mapped relationships between various criminals. Marcus Reed handles the banking and money laundering through his contacts at multiple financial institutions. Dr. Angela Foster creates the offshore LLCs and legal documentation that makes the thefts appear legitimate. Brad Johnson serves as the inside man who identifies targets and gains access to their financial information. How do they select victims? They monitor social media insurance databases and hospital records for families facing expensive medical situations. Brad's job is to get close to potential targets, study their financial patterns, and create opportunities for theft during moments of maximum vulnerability. Michael pulled out additional evidence that showed the network's sophisticated planning. "They've been studying your family for over 14 months, Mrs. Johnson. Brad began asking Emma questions about your business operations shortly after your divorce was finalized." Agent Williams activated a laptop that displayed email communications between network members dating back over a year. The messages revealed that my family had been selected as targets long before Marcus's accident with Brad, providing detailed intelligence about my business accounts, insurance policies, and personal relationships. "Brad reported to his associates that you were isolated and trusting, with substantial liquid assets and limited family support." Agent Williams read from one particularly cold-blooded email. "They viewed you as an ideal victim because you worked independently and had minimal oversight of your financial accounts." The systematic nature of their targeting was both terrifying and oddly reassuring. Our family hadn't been destroyed by personal failures or character flaws. We'd been hunted by professionals who specialized in exploiting the exact vulnerabilities that came with single parenthood and business ownership. The network's biggest mistake was involving Emma, Michael explained. In previous operations, they used strangers or distant acquaintances to gain access to victims. Using Brad's wife created emotional complications that have given us unprecedented insight into their methods. Agent Williams pulled up phone surveillance that revealed the network's current plans. They know you're investigating the theft, and they're accelerating their timeline to move the money permanently offshore. Based on intercepted communications, they plan to transfer all funds to untraceable cryptocurrency accounts within 48 hours. 48 hours. Marcus's treatment deadline was now aligned with the criminal's escape timeline, creating a narrow window where we could save both my son's life and achieve justice for all their victims. Here's what we're proposing, Agent Williams said, spreading out operational plans. We need Brad to attempt one final transaction that will reveal the location of all stolen funds and identify every network member. You would participate in a controlled interaction that makes Brad believe he needs to access the money immediately. The plan was complex but elegant. I would contact Brad directly, claiming that federal investigators had frozen all my accounts and threatening to expose his theft unless he returned the money immediately. Brad's predictable response would be to move the funds to final offshore locations, allowing federal agents to trace every transaction and identify all criminal associates. The risks are substantial, Agent Williams warned. If Brad realizes this is a setup, the network might eliminate everyone who can identify them, including you and Emma's family. What about Emma? Is she safe? Michael answered with grim honesty. Emma is in the most danger because she knows too much and has been documenting Brad's activities. The network typically eliminates accomplices who become liabilities, and Emma's resistance to their recent operations has marked her as a threat. Agent Williams revealed that federal marshals had been providing discreet protection for Emma and her children since Michael's investigation uncovered the death threats. Emma doesn't know about the protection detail, but we've been monitoring her family's safety while building our case. The revelation that Emma's life was in danger added urgency to the operation beyond recovering stolen money or achieving justice. Brad's criminal associates had killed before to protect their operation, and Emma's knowledge of their activities made her an inevitable target for elimination. There's something else you need to know, Agent Williams said, her expression becoming even more serious. We believe the network is planning to frame you for insurance fraud related to Marcus's accident. They've been creating false evidence suggesting you caused the crash deliberately to collect insurance money and justify their theft as preventing fraud. The frame-up attempt explained the CPS investigation and the coordinated attack on my credibility. Brad's network wasn't just stealing money. They were systematically destroying my life to prevent me from pursuing justice or exposing their crimes. If we execute this operation successfully, we'll recover all stolen funds, arrest every network member, and expose the false evidence they've created against you, Agent Williams promised. But if something goes wrong, you could face federal charges for insurance fraud and lose custody of Marcus permanently. As I left the FBI office with detailed instructions for my role in the sting operation, I understood that the next 48 hours would determine whether Marcus lived or died, whether our family achieved justice or destruction, and whether a criminal network that had victimized dozens of families would finally face consequences for their predatory behavior. The plan required perfect timing and nerves of steel as I sat in my car outside Brad's apartment complex at 6 a.m. knowing that federal agents were positioned throughout the area with surveillance equipment trained on every exit. Michael Thompson monitored communications from a van parked 2 blocks away, while Agent Williams coordinated with task force members who would execute simultaneous arrests across 3 states. My hands shook as I dialed Brad's number, knowing that this conversation would either save my family or destroy us completely. The phone rang 4 times before Brad answered with the groggy irritation of someone awakened too early. Destiny. What the hell do you want? Brad, we need to talk immediately. Federal agents contacted me yesterday about your theft, and they know everything. A long pause followed, and I could practically hear Brad's mind racing as he processed the implications of my call. I don't know what you're talking about. $500,000 from my business account, Brad. The FBI has surveillance footage of you at multiple banks' phone records and testimony from other victims of your theft ring. You're delusional. Nobody stole anything from you. But Brad's voice had changed, becoming more alert and calculating. He was no longer the confident predator who had smirked while destroying my family. He was a cornered criminal realizing that his carefully constructed operation was collapsing. I have 48 hours to recover the money for Marcus's treatment, or I'm giving the FBI everything I know about your criminal network. I continued following the script Agent Williams had prepared. That includes Emma's recordings of your phone calls and evidence about your other victims. The mention of Emma's recordings triggered exactly the reaction federal agents had predicted. Brad's breathing became rapid and shallow as he realized that his wife had been documenting his criminal activities. Emma wouldn't dare record me. She knows what would happen to her and the kids. She's been recording you for months, Brad. She has evidence about Marcus Reed Angela Foster and the offshore accounts you've been using to hide stolen money. Through Michael's communication equipment, I could hear Agent Williams confirming that Brad was making frantic phone calls to his criminal associates, warning them about potential federal surveillance and accelerating their escape plans. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Destiny. Brad said, his voice now carrying undisguised menace. This goes way beyond your little family drama. People have died for knowing less than you think you know. The death threat was exactly what federal agents needed to hear. Brad had just confessed to involvement in murders while confirming the existence of the criminal network that had been destroying families across multiple states. 48 hours, Brad. Return my money or face federal charges for theft, money laundering, and conspiracy. I ended the call and immediately drove to a secure location where Agent Williams waited with updates from surveillance teams monitoring Brad's movements. The sting operation was proceeding exactly as planned, with Brad making predictable choices that would expose his entire criminal network. Brad left his apartment 12 minutes after your call, Agent Williams reported. He drove directly to a storage facility where he retrieved multiple electronic devices and what appears to be large amounts of cash. Surveillance footage showed Brad acting with the panicked urgency of someone whose world was collapsing. He made 17 phone calls during the 30-minute drive to his first meeting location, each conversation monitored by federal agents who were mapping the network's communication patterns. He's meeting with Marcus Reed at a private airfield outside Phoenix, Agent Williams continued. They're arranging immediate flight to the Cayman Islands where the network maintains offshore accounts. But Brad's escape plan contained a fatal flaw that federal agents had anticipated. His panic had made him careless about operational security, leading him to access the complete stolen money trail in ways that revealed every account, every transaction, and every criminal associate who had participated in the theft operation. Brad just authorized transfers totaling $12 million from accounts across 4 countries, Michael reported from his monitoring station. He's consolidating everything into a single cryptocurrency wallet that he can access from anywhere in the world. The massive transfer revealed the true scope of the criminal network's activities. My stolen $500,000 was just a small fraction of the money Brad's operation had taken from vulnerable families over several years of predatory theft. Agent Williams coordinated with international law enforcement agencies as Brad's plane taxied toward takeoff. Swiss banking authorities are freezing the cryptocurrency accounts. Cayman Island police are arresting the money laundering contacts, and we're taking down the entire domestic network simultaneously. But Brad's plane never reached cruising altitude. The pilot, who had not been informed about his passengers' criminal activities, received notification from air traffic control that he was carrying a wanted fugitive. When confronted with Brad's true identity and outstanding federal warrants, the pilot immediately turned around and landed back at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. The dramatic arrest occurred as Brad attempted to bribe airport security with briefcases full of cash that turned out to be money stolen from his victims. His desperate offers of payment to anyone who would help him escape only provided additional evidence of his criminal activities and consciousness of guilt. As federal agents led Brad away in handcuffs, he screamed threats against me, Marcus, and Emma that revealed the psychopathic mindset behind the sophisticated criminal operation. "You have no idea what you've done. My associates will find you and your son Emma and her brats are dead. You'll pay for destroying everything." The threats provided final confirmation that Brad's network used violence and intimidation to protect their operation, justifying the extensive federal investigation that had finally brought them to justice. The federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix buzzed with activity as prosecutors presented evidence that would dismantle one of the most sophisticated family theft operations ever documented by law enforcement. I sat in the gallery beside Emma, who looked fragile but relieved as she watched her abusive husband face justice for crimes that had terrorized families across the Southwest. Agent Williams approached our seats during a court recess, carrying documents that would change everything about our family's financial future. "Mrs. Johnson, the asset recovery operation has uncovered something extraordinary," Agent Williams said, spreading financial statements across the table in the courthouse conference room. The seized accounts contain over $12.4 million stolen from 47 different families over the past 4 years. The scope of the criminal network's activities was staggering. Brad and his associates had systematically targeted families during medical emergencies, stealing money meant for children's cancer treatments, accident recovery, premature birth expenses, and other life-threatening situations that left parents vulnerable to financial predators. Federal asset forfeiture laws require returning all stolen funds to identified victims, Agent Williams explained. "Your $500,000 will be returned immediately, but there's additional compensation available." She showed me legal documents that outlined victim compensation programs and whistleblower rewards for cases that exposed major criminal operations. "Since your cooperation was instrumental in breaking this case, you're entitled to federal compensation of approximately $300,000. But the most significant financial development involved unclaimed victim funds from families who could not be located or had died before recovery efforts succeeded. 8 families who were victimized by this network are deceased or cannot be found," Agent Williams continued. "Their stolen funds, totaling approximately $2.8 million, will be distributed to surviving victims based on their losses and cooperation with the investigation." The mathematics were almost impossible to comprehend. Marcus's medical emergency had led to discovering a criminal network whose destruction would make us significantly wealthier than we had been before the theft occurred. "The total recovery for your family will be approximately $1.2 million, Agent Williams announced. "This includes your original stolen funds federal compensation and a portion of unclaimed victim money." Emma sat quietly beside me, tears streaming down her face as she processed the reality that Brad's criminal activities had finally ended. The abuse, the threats, the terror of living with a man who used their children as hostages would never control her life again. "Emma will receive victim compensation as well," Agent Williams explained. "Brad stole over $60,000 from her personal accounts and subjected her family to systematic abuse and coercion. She's entitled to federal assistance for relocation therapy and establishing independent financial security." The courthouse hallway filled with other victims and their families as news of the network's destruction spread throughout communities that had been terrorized by their predatory activities. Parents who had lost children's medical funds, elderly victims who had been manipulated into fraudulent investments, and families who had suffered years of financial devastation finally saw justice served. Dr. Rodriguez arrived at the courthouse with updates about Marcus's medical progress that seemed almost miraculous given the crisis we had faced just days earlier. Marcus's recovery has exceeded every expectation, Dr. Rodriguez announced with the genuine excitement that pediatric specialists reserve for their most remarkable cases. The experimental treatment in Boston won't be necessary. His brain function has returned to completely normal levels through conventional therapy. The news was so unexpected and wonderful that I couldn't immediately process its implications. Marcus wouldn't need the expensive procedure that had driven our desperate search for stolen money. He was healing naturally, his young brain recovering from trauma with the resilience that made children such remarkable patients. I've never seen neurological recovery this complete after such severe initial trauma, Dr. Rodriguez continued. Marcus will need physical therapy for a few more weeks, but his cognitive function, motor skills, and emotional development show no lasting effects from the accident. Emma's children rushed to hug their mother as she broke down crying with relief and joy. Her 3 kids would no longer live in fear of their father's violence, and she could finally build the safe, stable home she had dreamed of providing for them. Patricia arrived at the courthouse looking older and more fragile than I had ever seen her, carrying a written apology that she had worked on for hours, but couldn't deliver verbally through her tears of shame and regret. "I failed you and Marcus in the worst possible way," Patricia whispered as she handed me the letter. "I chose to believe Brad's lies instead of trusting my own daughter. I nearly lost my grandson forever because of my selfishness and stupidity." Reading Patricia's apology revealed the systematic manipulation that Brad had used to turn family members against each other while pursuing his criminal goals. He'd convinced Patricia that helping with the theft would save Emma's family while teaching me humility about my success and independence. "Brad told me that you were planning to move to California and abandon Marcus with me," Patricia explained through her tears. "He said the theft would force you to stay in Phoenix and appreciate your family support. I was trying to keep our family together, but I nearly destroyed it instead." The manipulation had been masterful and cruel, exploiting Patricia's fears about losing family connections, while convincing her that criminal behavior was actually protective love. Brad had used similar psychological tactics on Emma, turning her love for her children into a weapon that forced compliance with his increasingly dangerous demands. Children's Hospital had become a place of celebration rather than crisis, as Marcus demonstrated recovery that amazed medical staff who had feared permanent brain damage just weeks earlier. His room filled with flowers, balloons, and artwork from classmates who had followed his progress through school newsletters and community fundraising efforts that had brought our neighborhood together in remarkable ways. Marcus sat up in his hospital bed chatting excitedly with Dr. Rodriguez about his plans to return to school and rejoin his baseball team. His speech was clear and confident, his motor skills were developing normally, and most importantly, his personality remained the bright, curious, resilient spirit that had always defined him. "Mommy, I remember everything that happened," Marcus said as I helped him with physical therapy exercises that would strengthen the muscles weakened by his hospital stay. "I remember Uncle Brad and Aunt Emma talking about taking your money. I remember the scary ride in the ambulance. But I also remember how brave you were when I was scared." Dr. Rodriguez pulled me aside to explain the remarkable nature of Marcus's recovery from both medical and psychological perspectives. Children often remember traumatic events with remarkable clarity, but Marcus has processed his experiences in exceptionally healthy ways, Dr. Rodriguez explained. "He understands that bad things happen to your family, but he doesn't blame himself or feel afraid about the future." Marcus had asked thoughtful questions about why Brad had hurt our family and whether similar bad people might target other children. His concerns showed emotional maturity beyond his 7 years, but also demonstrated that he felt secure in our family's ability to protect and care for him. "I told my friends at school that some grown-ups do bad things, but good grown-ups always fight to protect kids," Marcus explained during one of our conversations about the ordeal. "You fought the bad people and won, so now we're safe forever." Emma began visiting regularly, tentatively rebuilding relationships that had been damaged by years of Brad's manipulation and control. Her children, initially shy and nervous around new people, gradually warmed up to Marcus and me as they learned that not all adults used anger and intimidation to control family dynamics. "I'm so sorry for everything Brad put you through," Emma said during one particularly emotional visit. "I knew he was hurting people, but I was too scared to stop him. Every time I thought about leaving or calling police, he threatened to hurt my babies." Emma's healing process would take much longer than Marcus's physical recovery, requiring therapy to address years of domestic violence and psychological manipulation. But her courage in documenting Brad's crimes and ultimately testifying against his network had saved multiple families from similar victimization. Patricia's journey toward redemption began with actions rather than words, as she dedicated herself to supporting Marcus's recovery and making amends for her terrible judgment during the crisis. "I want to understand how I became so foolish and selfish," Patricia said as she read books about manipulation tactics and family dysfunction that explained how Brad had exploited her fears and prejudices. "I nearly lost the two people who matter most to me because I let a criminal convince me that right was wrong and wrong was right." Patricia's volunteer work with victim support services became her way of honoring the family members she had failed, while learning to recognize manipulation tactics that predators used against vulnerable relatives. The Marcus Foundation grew beyond my initial vision as other victims of financial crimes contacted us about supporting families facing similar crises. Emma became the foundation's first employee, using her experience with domestic violence and financial manipulation to help other abuse victims escape dangerous situations. "I want to help other mothers who are trapped like I was," Emma explained as she developed programs connecting abuse victims with legal resources, safe housing, and financial assistance. Nobody should have to choose between their safety and their children's welfare. Marcus participated in foundation events with the natural confidence of a child who had survived terrible experiences but maintained faith in family love and community support. His speeches at fundraising events often moved adults to tears, while inspiring other children to speak up about adults who made them feel unsafe. "My mom saved me from bad people, and now we help other families stay safe too." Marcus would tell audiences with matter-of-fact pride that made complex legal and social issues understandable to everyone. The foundation's first major success involved helping 3 families that Brad's network had targeted, but not yet robbed, preventing financial devastation before it occurred. Marcus presented certificates of appreciation to community members who had reported suspicious activities, teaching him about civic responsibility while showing other children how they could help protect their neighbors. The law office of Jessica Walsh had become a place of triumph rather than desperation, as she presented documents that would transform our family's financial future in ways I never could have imagined. Marcus sat beside me in the conference room, having been given permission to miss school for what Jessica described as one of the most remarkable estate settlements in her career. "Mrs. Johnson, your grandmother's estate has been fully probated, and the timing couldn't be more extraordinary," Jessica announced, spreading inheritance documents across the polished conference table. She restructured her will just 6 months before her death, apparently anticipating exactly the kind of family financial manipulation that you experienced. The inheritance included $1.8 million in property investments and cash assets that my grandmother had accumulated through decades of careful savings and wise investment decisions. But more importantly, her final letter revealed that she had been watching our family dynamics with the wisdom of someone who had lived through her own experiences with financial manipulation. My dearest Destiny. The letter began in my grandmother's careful handwriting. "I have watched Patricia struggle with jealousy about your success, while Emma and her husband show signs of entitlement and resentment. I fear that your independence and achievements may make you a target for family members who view your prosperity as something they deserve to share. The letter continued with specific instructions about protecting the inheritance from family manipulation, while using the funds to secure Marcus's future and support other families facing similar challenges. Use this money to build something bigger than our family's immediate needs, my grandmother had written. Help other parents protect their children from the kind of predatory behavior that destroys families during their most vulnerable moments. Combined with recovered stolen funds and federal compensation, our total financial resources now exceeded $3 million, transforming us from victims of crime into advocates with substantial resources for fighting financial predators who targeted vulnerable families. Your grandmother also included specific provisions for Emma and Patricia, Jessica explained. She understood that they might be victims of manipulation rather than genuine criminals, and she wanted to provide opportunities for redemption rather than punishment. The inheritance included trust funds for Emma's children that would pay for their education and provide financial security independent of any adult manipulation. Patricia received a smaller inheritance contingent on completing courses about elder financial abuse and volunteering with victim support organizations. She wanted family healing rather than permanent division, Jessica explained, but she made sure that healing came with accountability and education. Marcus absorbed the information with the remarkable adaptability that children demonstrate when facing major life changes. Does this mean we can help more kids whose families get hurt by bad people? He asked with characteristic focus on how our good fortune could benefit others. The Marcus Foundation evolved into something far more comprehensive than emergency financial assistance, as we developed programs addressing the root causes of family financial vulnerability. We created educational workshops helping parents protect their assets during medical crises, legal clinics connecting victims with qualified attorneys, and support groups for families recovering from financial crimes. Emma's role expanded as she became a recognized expert on domestic violence situations involving financial manipulation. Her presentations at law enforcement conferences and victim advocate training sessions helped professionals understand the complex dynamics that trapped abuse victims in relationships with financial criminals. I stayed with Brad for years because he convinced me that leaving would destroy my children's financial security. Emma explained to audiences of police officers, social workers, and victim advocates. He used my love for my kids as a weapon against all of us. Patricia's volunteer work with elder financial abuse prevention programs became her path toward rebuilding family relationships while preventing other seniors from falling victim to similar manipulation tactics. I understand now how Brad studied my fears about being abandoned by my family and used those fears to make me betray my own daughter and grandson. Patricia shared with groups of elderly adults learning to recognize predatory behavior. Age and loneliness make seniors particularly vulnerable to criminals who specialize in exploiting family dynamics. The Foundation's success attracted national attention as we developed model programs that other communities could adapt for protecting families during medical emergencies. Our research revealed that financial crimes targeting families during health crises had increased dramatically as medical costs rose and insurance coverage became more complex. Marcus's role as the Foundation's inspiration and youngest advocate made him a powerful spokesperson for child protection issues. His appearances at congressional hearings about family financial crime prevention demonstrated how children could recover from trauma while helping other vulnerable young people. Bad grown-ups try to hurt families when kids are sick because they think parents will be too scared to fight back, Marcus testified before a House subcommittee studying financial crimes. But good grown-ups always fight to protect kids, and good kids help other kids stay safe. The warm Arizona sun painted golden highlights across the playground at Marcus's new school as I watched my son race across the monkey bars with the natural athleticism of a completely healthy 8-year-old. 2 years had passed since the accident that nearly destroyed our family, and Marcus's recovery had been so complete that doctors considered his case a model for pediatric trauma rehabilitation. The federal courthouse steps where Brad had been sentenced to 18 years in federal prison seemed like a distant memory as our family focused on building positive futures rather than dwelling on past traumas. Brad's criminal network had been completely dismantled, with all associates receiving substantial prison sentences and over $15 million in stolen assets returned to victims across 7 states. Emma approached the playground where her children played alongside Marcus and his new friends, her face showing the peaceful confidence of someone who had escaped an abusive relationship and built independent success. Her work with the Marcus Foundation had evolved into a national consulting business, helping law enforcement agencies understand financial crimes involving domestic violence. The foundation received another invitation to present at the International Conference on Family Financial Crime. Emma announced as we watched our children play together with the easy friendships that had developed as our families healed. They want Marcus to speak about child resilience and recovery. Marcus had become an articulate advocate for children affected by family financial crimes, sharing his story with audiences across the country while maintaining the normal childhood experiences that remained his priority. His speeches combined wisdom beyond his years with age-appropriate perspective that helped other young victims understand they could recover from trauma. Patricia joined us at the playground carrying the homemade cookies that had become her signature contribution to school events and family gatherings. Her transformation from enabler of financial crime to advocate for victim protection had been remarkable, driven by genuine remorse and determination to prevent other families from experiencing similar betrayal. I received a letter from Mrs. Henderson in Tucson. Patricia said, referring to an elderly woman whose case had been featured in our foundation's educational materials. She recognized the warning signs when her nephew tried to pressure her into changing her will, and she contacted authorities instead of becoming another victim. The Foundation's educational programs had prevented dozens of financial crimes by teaching vulnerable populations to recognize manipulation tactics and resist pressure from family members seeking inappropriate access to their resources. Our success stories included elderly adults who avoided investment scams, single parents who protected emergency funds during medical crises, and abuse victims who escaped relationships involving financial coercion. Dr. Rodriguez visited occasionally to check on Marcus's continued development and contribute medical expertise to foundation research about trauma recovery in children. Her amazement at Marcus's complete neurological recovery had led to published research that helped other families understand the remarkable resilience of young patients facing similar injuries. Marcus's case changed how we approach pediatric trauma recovery. Dr. Rodriguez explained during her most recent visit. His combination of excellent medical care, family support, and purposeful engagement with helping others created optimal conditions for healing. The foundation had grown to employ 12 staff members and operate programs in 4 states, but its most meaningful accomplishment remained the network of families who had found strength and healing through shared experiences. Monthly gatherings brought together parents and children who understood the unique challenges of recovering from family financial crimes. Marcus thrived in his role as both inspiration and active participant in foundation activities, but he never lost sight of normal childhood priorities like baseball, video games, and friendship. His balance between advocacy work and age-appropriate fun demonstrated healthy recovery from trauma that could have permanently damaged his trust in family relationships. I like helping other kids, but I also like just being a regular kid who plays baseball and does homework. Marcus explained to reporters who sometimes asked if foundation work interfered with normal childhood experiences. Helping people makes me happy, but so does catching fly balls and reading adventure books. The Marcus Foundation's national recognition led to policy changes protecting family emergency funds from exploitation, stricter penalties for financial crimes, targeting medical crisis situations, and improved coordination between law enforcement agencies investigating family theft operations. Standing in our new home's backyard as Marcus and Emma's children splashed in the swimming pool, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had transformed our family's greatest tragedy into our most meaningful triumph. The criminals who tried to destroy us during our most vulnerable moment had instead given us the opportunity to build something larger than ourselves. Emma's laughter as she watched her children play safely in our yard represented the healing that had emerged from devastation. Her courage in documenting Brad's crimes and testifying against his criminal network had saved multiple families from similar victimization, while proving that even victims of domestic violence could find strength to fight back against their abusers. Patricia's dedication to preventing elder financial abuse had restored her relationship with Marcus while creating meaningful purpose from her terrible mistake during our crisis. Her volunteer work educated hundreds of seniors about recognizing manipulation tactics while demonstrating that redemption was possible for family members who recognized their failures and worked to prevent others from making similar errors. The Foundation's success had created financial security that allowed me to focus on advocacy work rather than building business profits, but more importantly, it had given our family a shared mission that transformed past pain into present purpose. Justice hadn't just been served through Brad's imprisonment and the recovery of stolen funds. Real justice had come through the love, healing, and protection we had built from the ashes of betrayal. The family that emerged from our crisis was stronger, more honest, and more loving than what we had lost. Marcus's complete recovery represented more than medical success. It demonstrated that children could survive terrible trauma and emerge with increased empathy, wisdom, and determination to protect others facing similar challenges. Have you ever experienced a situation where family betrayal led to unexpected strength and healing? How do you think families can protect themselves from financial manipulation during medical emergencies? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding justice. Thank you for joining me on this journey of recovery and redemption. Remember that even in our darkest moments, the power to fight back and protect the people we love can lead to victories we never imagined possible. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never underestimate the difference one family can make in protecting others from predatory behavior. Until next time, may your families find healing from betrayal and strength in unity.